of Creative Armenia Week 2021 spring. We may have more later. It's been quite a week for Creative Armenia. We've had 5 wonderful panels. If you haven't had a chance to see all of them, they will be posted online shortly, starting next week. And we also announced a new round of Spark grantees earlier this week. Be sure to check out all of that at creativearmenia.org. And, if you can afford it, consider making a donation to us. We're not only an arts foundation for the Armenian people, we really function more like a galaxy brain for Armenian culture. I mean, we're just doing so many things at so many different levels, both publicly and behind the scenes, that it reels the mind. So, we could always use some fuel. And we're happy to have you here, and we're happy to have our panelists here for this closing panel. These illustrious people who are doing such great work in the entertainment industry based in the US and also kind of globally. So I'm going to introduce our panelists. My name is Alec Mohibian, and I'm the founding VP of Creative Armenia. I'm going to introduce the panelists one by one. I'm going to ask each of them to kind of tell us a little bit about when they felt they broke through in Hollywood. And then we're going to open it up to your questions. Fill it up. You can type them in. You can vote on which questions you want to see answered ahead, and more than others. And I'll select some, and we'll have a good old chat. So our first panelist is Catherine Serafian, Catherine Serafian. Catherine is an Armenian-American film producer and senior vice president of talent at Pixar Animation Studios. So, Ms. Serafian produced the Academy Award-winning feature film Brave and the Academy Award-nominated short film Lifted. Her credits also include production supervision at Monsters, Inc. and production management on The Incredibles before beginning her tenure as a producer. She was nominated for the Producers Guild Award for Outstanding Producer of an Animated Theatrical Motion Picture for her work on Brave. Catherine, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here and also in the company of this group, some of whom I hadn't gotten to meet before. So thanks very much. Hey, everybody.
Yeah, could you give us as before we meet the rest of the group, could you give us a little bit of an insight as to kind of, how you went from being, I think you started out at a fairly entry-level position at Pixar.
Fairly entry level, as they would say, yes.
How did the transition, what was the kind of key step in your career there? Could you kind of identify the moment for us that it started to ascend?
I can try. Hi, everybody. Yeah, I know each of us has probably a very different type of story, and it's interesting with a panel called Breaking into Hollywood. I'm very much sort of what we call Hollywood North. And I was, educated at, UCLA, and I did the sort of Hollywood LA internship thing in studios and that kind of thing. But after film school, and I had a master's in film from UCLA, and I was doing all these sort of internships and, development and different places around LA and production. And I liked it, but I had this strong sense that I wanted to really use technology for storytelling. I had taken a number of classes in the graduate program around computer applications for filmmaking. I had, I'm going to tell you how, you'll see how old I am now. That's like a breakthrough moment for me, not in my career, but in my sort of awakening of what I wanted to do, was seeing Jurassic Park, seeing Terminator 2, and knowing like the way computer effects could be used for storytelling sort of, exploded my brain. And I know for a lot of people, those were pivotal moments, For me, it made me want to work at what we called back then Hollywood North. I don't even know if we call it that anymore, but to get into Northern California, technology storytelling. At the time, that was Colossal Pictures. They were doing all those cool logos for MTV, Liquid Television. It was Industrial Light and Magic. It was Pixar. And so even while I was still in graduate school, I started applying for roles at Pixar, knowing I wanted to leave LA and try to really pursue this technology, this sort of creative technology mind meld. And in terms of once I got started at Pixar, was breaking through. I think it's been a long sliding scale, because I think for a long time it's very easy, in maybe some of you out there and some of you on this panel have experienced this, I'm not sure. Everybody looks really confident. We all look like we've got it dialed in, but there's a huge amount of insecurity along the way, or else we wouldn't be in an artistic pursuit. And as we sort of question everything at every step of our career, have I made it? Have I made it? Have I made it? It's like, it's a sliding scale. But I do remember feeling really validated one day when I was still kind of an assistant. Alex said I started pretty entry level. I was an assistant to a production supervisor, and I was promoted to coordinator. And along the line, I became, I worked on some commercials and some films, and then I was promoted to a manager. And I'm like, well, what feels like you've made it? And it was actually when a young hopeful, a student, asked if they could interview me to learn about my career. I'm like, I have a career. So it was sort of through the eyes of someone else that I realized that I, quote, made it. I wasn't a producer yet. I wasn't an executive. I was just somebody who was working. And that was when somebody asked me for advice at the time. I remember, and I think it was actually a young Armenian student. That was when I realized, wow, how did I get here? I had, and I know we'll talk about connections later, but like I had no networking ability. I had no connections. I'm a terrible networker, actually. And I didn't have any family connections into the industry. But there had been a coordinator at the time, a stop motion animation show called Bump in the Night. Her name was Kat, I remember. And she was, as we'd say, just a coordinator. She was a coordinator working on the show. But I remember she showed me around their production hub in Brisbane, California, outside San Francisco. And we walked around and we saw the miniature sets. And I learned about how stop motion animation works from this coordinator. And when I look back on it, I'm like, I'm a coordinator and someone's asking me this. I'm not a high level person, but I have information and I have access someone doesn't have. And that was when I realized, like, making it is sort of, it's a sliding scale, it's whatever. It's when you're able to, I think, give something and provide to someone else something that you didn't have before. For me, that felt like a turning point, and it also helped my confidence along the way. So
that's an interesting point, that you can almost find you can track your progress by who you're able to help. I think that's a good lesson for people to internalize, even before they feel like they've made it, because you kind of have to make it your own way, or make it in your own mind first.
Yeah,
I don't know. We'll figure it out. But I appreciate that story. I'll move on to introduce our next panelist, Mr. Michael Gurjian. Michael Gurjian is a Renaissance man, Armenian-American actor, filmmaker, and writer. He's won an Emmy Award for Outstanding Supporting Actor for his role as David Goodson in David's Mother. He's also known for his role as Justin on the Golden Globe-winning series Party of Five, and Heroin Bob in the film SLC Punk. As a director, Gurjian achieved recognition for his first major independent film, Illusion, which he wrote, directed, and starred in alongside Hollywood legend Kirk Douglas. His upcoming feature film explores the journey of a genocide survivor who finds himself in Soviet Armenia. And we're going to see some stills from that film, which he's in the editing room completing as we speak. And it's really exciting. Creative Armenia has been happy to kind of help facilitate the on the ground stuff for him, to help out. And Michael, thank you for being here. We've chatted before, and your career has many different tiers, of course, but I'm curious to know when, maybe at first as an actor, first as a writer, whenever you feel like you kind of found your footing.
Oh boy. Well, let's see. I like Catherine, I'm from the Bay Area, San Francisco, and I went to UCLA as well, to the theater department. I actually, my first big job was as a dancer. I heard about an audition, and it was for a Newsies, a musical, Disney musical called Newsies. And I had never really danced before, but I just faked it and got a job. And then from there started getting more acting jobs. And in terms of making it, it's an interesting thing, this idea of breaking into Hollywood. I've always, if you want to have a career, longevity, I think you gotta spend enough time figuring out what you're after or what you're passionate about, beyond all the draws of money and fame and all that. And for me, that's taken a long time. And I've tried, I've done every possible job there is in film. I've done, and I've settled. I love to act, I love to write, and I love directing. But I think it takes time to having a big break. And when I started out, I had some good success when I was younger. But really finding what you're like, what I'm passionate about, and for me, it's really storytelling. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
well, I'm curious. Well, I guess it was interesting for you to. How did you find out that it was storytelling? I mean, at what point did you kind of feel like it sounds like you were performing for a while, and you were and something about this because you've also written a novel. You've also clearly this is it. You've been pursuing it on many different levels. Was there a point as an actor where it kind of dawned on you that, well, you want to be the hand that writes the part?
I think, like Catherine, I'll expose my age quite well here. I remember being quite young and seeing Sex, Lies, and Videotapes in the theater, and independent filmmaking, just that, and then after that, Sling Blade, and the power of, with very little, having such an impact. It just, to me, that was kind of a turning point in terms of what I wanted to pursue. I love big, Indiana Jones is my favorite movie. I love big productions and stuff, but something about independent filmmaking for me has always been, kind of a draw. And what's independent filmmaking? It's just, I think, I don't know, how would you define independent filmmaking?
I mean, it's another independent filmmaking became a buzzword in the late 90s, and it's been buzzy ever since because every big production is behind it. But it seems like I would say it's a film that's driven by its creator, or originates from its creator rather than from, let's say, a big company. I mean, that seems to me that would be my definition of an independent film.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a place for we call film and stuff is content, and content is important. But I like being a part of things that are trying to discover creatively. And as an actor or as a director, it's not always easy to find. And I think for me, Hollywood and acting and stuff, I've always kind of balanced between being a part of projects that are big and make money, and being hungry for things that are different, that are trying to create something new. So.
I appreciate that, and we'll dig into that deeper as people's questions roll in. And now I'll move on to, as we try to get Sevohanyan back on the panel, who's having a bit of a technical issue, which I'm trying to communicate to our massive team of backstage operatives. I will introduce Darren Bogosian, our next panelist. Darren is a talent agent at UTA, United Talent Agency. He's a talent. His clients include such up-and-comers as Harrison Ford, Michael Douglas, Kurt Russell, many others. We were just talking about his role in making sure that Eric Bogosian took on the part he did for Uncut Gems. I don't know if that, how secretive that was, but that was a great coup, because that was such a great role for Eric and for the world to see. So Darren, thank you so much for joining us. Darren is like an agent. He's the guy you talk about wanting to sneak your script to at the steakhouse at midnight in the fictional world of LA that once existed, where things were open late. Darren, in terms of your own career as an agent, what was kind of your first breakthrough in terms of the first client you kind of got? I don't know how it really works for agents, but I mean, I know, roughly, but was there a moment where you took a leap in that regard?
Sure. I mean, early on, I just, I'm from Fresno, as many Armenians are. And I had always known that I wanted to work in the entertainment industry. And, truth be told, I, experimented with acting a little bit. As I was just saying, I was in a movie. Last time I saw Michael was 23 or 24 years ago in a little movie that actually shot in Fresno. But that was actually the time of my life where I was really sort of at a crossroads. Like, what was I going to do? I was going to acting school, a place called Beverly Hills Playhouse. I'd graduated from USC, where I had majored in business, minored in film. I went to USC because, sorry for the UCLA people over there. I went to USC because of the film department, and just, the whole intent being that, that could potentially provide the sort of networking opportunities to lead to a career in Hollywood. And also did the internship thing. And I remember well, it's funny, there are several sort of little breakthroughs, and I always tell everyone, they're like, how did you do it? And you can't really, the path that you shoot for or expect to walk down, it's rarely what you end up doing. Everyone sort of has their own path. And, you never really know, with the twists and turns, like, who's that person you met that ultimately introduces you to that other person that introduces you to, whoever that actually then, when in hindsight, you look back and say, oh, that's actually how it all happened for me. So I thought I was working in the business, in entertainment, when I got my first internship at Channel 30 Action News in Fresno, which I was probably the most ambitious intern they've ever had. It was pure, local news, like, just tagged along in the van, like, went on a prostitution sting, went to plane crashes. It was amazing. And, from there on, I had ABC on my resume, and that led to an internship at CNN, actually, in LA. And, which was great. But then I soon realized that I didn't really want to be doing journalism. But then I had CNN on my resume, and then I got my hands on this thing called the UTA job list, which is essentially every intern / assistant opportunity, available in that moment. And it's published, UTA publishes it every week. And when I got that was kind of like the holy grail. I was like, oh my God, because I just didn't know. I was from Fresno. I didn't have any connections, in Hollywood either. Like, my family's in the raisin business, as many Armenians are in the Central Valley. And once I got my hands on that job list, I literally remember I figured out how to fax from my computer. I sent out 40 resumes that night with ABC and CNN on my resume, and got a lot of hits. And I ended up interning for a guy named Arnold Kopelson, who, back then, this is 1997, had like one of the most expensive overall deals with Fox. Was in Nakatomi Plaza. If for you diehard fans, you're on the 14th floor. And that's really where I sort of cut my teeth in sort of, like Catherine was saying, like doing coverage and learning development and really being exposed to all of the agencies and, so on and so forth. So that really, getting that job, and then once I had Kopelson on my resume, really opened doors. From there, I went on, and then I interned for ICM. And I believe, weren't you represented by Tracy Brennan?
Who?
Michael?
Yeah.
At ICM?
I think so. Yeah.
So I think I was interning for her.
And Nick Stein.
At ICM in 1998. And you were her client. And that was really where I got my sort of my first taste for, the agency world. And then, you know, I had an opportunity to join the mailroom then, but I remember thinking to myself, I'm going to be an actor. And then joined the Beverly Hills, graduated, joined the Beverly Hills Playhouse, and then was on sort of this dual path where I was studying acting, but then also, you know, had all these internships, and, you know, had another internship with a producer named Kathy Conrad, who many of you may know. And then decided I needed to start making some money because I was working for free and wasn't making any money acting. That was for certain. So a girl that I went to high school with in Fresno. So I went to USC to network and meet people and get all these connections. I got the job list, and I went to all these internships. The person who actually got me my first paying job in Hollywood was a girl that I went to high school with in Fresno. So it's like hilarious. I could have literally gone to college on the moon, and the same thing could have happened where this girl that I went to high school with in Fresno, who happened to work in marketing at Paramount and was in charge of all of the temps for whatever reason at Paramount, got me a job in marketing, which led to a one-day job. It was supposed to be one day working for a filmmaker named Amy Heckerling. And that turned into a 1.5 year long gig. So that was really, I guess, my first big break, where I had a real job, real filmmaker, working on the Paramount lot. You know, from there, I had an opportunity to join, you know, everyone always had said to me along the way in all of these internships, you know, you're an agent. What are you doing? Your personality, you're an agent. And I was like, that is an insult. You know, how dare you? I'm not a scumbag agent. Come on. I'm a producer. I'm creative. I'm all of the above. I'm not and then finally I succumbed when I thought to myself, okay, if I really want to make a name for myself in the industry, the agency is really the hub. Everything flows through an agency, really. And so I took the plunge and applied to all of the, you know, agency mail rooms, and, you know, ended up at CAA and was there for, you know, about 8 years. And then, as many agents we do, we shuffle the deck and, you know, take the leap. And then I swam over to UTA for a better deal, and, you know, been there now for 11 years. But you know what, like, so it doesn't really work. Like, you know, what was my first big client? Like, what was my first big break? Like, once you're in the machine, the major agency machine, you know, you're brought onto teams. You know, if you excel, you're brought onto more teams. And, you know, just with respect to UTA, you know, I was brought onto the Harrison Ford team, you know, early on, and Michael Douglas, and yes, you know, recently signed Kurt Russell. You know, I'll also represent his son, who, you know, is also doing really well, Wyatt Russell, who I don't know if any of you out there recently saw Falcon and Winter Soldier, but he plays, you know, Captain America, which made a lot of waves. And, you know, the thing that you know, and I know, I'm sorry, I've been talking a while, but I just want to just close with this thought, because I was so resistant to being an agent because I felt I couldn't be creatively fulfilled. And let me tell you, every single day I act like a producer, right? And I am creatively challenged each and every single day, because I could be reading an article in the New York Times, think it can make a great movie, and then, you know, bring up the idea of that in a staff meeting, and then, you know, 3 lit agents will raise their hands and suggest their filmmakers and writers, and, you know, oh, this would be right for this actor. And then all of a sudden, in 90 seconds, after you just had an idea after reading an article, you've packaged a movie, you know? So it's just a snippet of what's possible when you're at a major agency and you have all of these resources at your disposal. And yeah, but again, to you know, in hindsight, when I look back and all the things that I tried to do to break in, all these internships, all these things, what was the thing that actually got the ball rolling was my friend Kelly Nichols, that I went to high school with at Bullard High, Fresno, California. She got me my first job. There you go.
keep your high school friends forever. I think that's a valuable lesson that maybe the last year has been reinforcing for a lot of people. Thank you for that background, Darren. And I'm sure we'll have some follow-ups to that, because the fact of the matter is that I think almost any job in show business is an acting job to some degree. I mean, as an agent, you're kind of on stage every time you're trying to make a deal, and it's probably a good lesson for people to keep their ears and eyes open to the possibility that their skills in one particular department might be even more useful in another side of the industry that they didn't really see themselves being a part of. There seem to be a lot of stories like that. I mean, whether it's actors turning to writers, actors turning to agents, agents turning to producers, producers turning to agents, seems to be a kind of a common pattern. Speaking of which, we'll go to someone who's at a different stage in his agent career, Tigran Babajanian. Tigran is the talent manager based at Principal Entertainment. He represents actors across TV and film. He's a young man, much like all of you. Also, at Creative Armenia, one of our founding principles is we don't believe in death. So as a thing. So, everyone on this panel is super young by Armenian standards. Tigran is also from a place called Gyumri. Gyumri, if you don't know, is a city in Armenia that produces a lot of interesting looking people. So Tigran, welcome to your first Creative Armenia debut. You're at a point in your career where you may think that perhaps that whatever moment hasn't happened for you that's already happened for, let's say, Darren. But nevertheless, you're on quite the rise. So I think that I'd like to hear from you where you felt like you started to feel your kind of, your legs beneath you, as they say in basketball, maybe in the 1970s. I don't think they've said it recently, but I've heard that phrase before. Where have you felt yourself find your stride as a talent manager, which is similar to being an agent?
Yeah, I started about 10 years ago. I started interning at a place called Sanders Armstrong Caserta, thinking that I was going to go and be an agent, Ari Gold, caught up in the entourage, glitz and glam of it all. It was a fantastic place. I really was fortunate to fall into good hands like that. I found it through the UTA job list, just like Darren, and I was there for 7 years. And I think I agree. Like, I think one of the moments that I felt that kind of breakout or like feeling my legs under me was I had just been promoted. I was intern and then assistant and then a manager. And it was during pilot season, and I booked 3 of my clients on three different series. And the third one, I remember calling my boss on a Saturday morning, and we were just giggling. There was no conversation. We were just giggling because she was like, "I'm a genius for promoting you." And I was like, "I don't know how this happened, but it did." And then I was there for 7 years. And then 3 years ago, 2 of the partners and I transitioned to Principal Entertainment. And I think being at a company like Principal, where we're kind of playing a different ball game. The access to information that we have, the kinds of clients that we have, and the most important, the human beings that are there. Everyone is just such great people. But being at a place where we just had a client that was nominated for an Oscar, and we have people that are in that caliber is really incredible. And it's really, it reminds me that, this trajectory has been incredible. And I'm fortunate to be at the place that I am. And now more than ever, like, the kinds of people that are returning phone calls, reaching out or asking for me specifically, it's another indication that, we're doing it, yeah, and we're at the place that we need to be, and it's only up from here.
Tigran, I've detected a certain mountain energy in your approach and style to this business. I kind of brushed it, but I want to actually put a spotlight on the concept of the talent manager, because it is actually fundamentally different from being an agent. It's not similar. It's just similar in the minds of people who are kind of searching for both. But I'd like you, if you can, since maybe people in Armenia aren't quite aware, could you kind of like clarify for us the difference between being a talent manager, such as yourself, and being an agent? Most people in Hollywood, most people in show business have both an agent and a manager. Some people only have a manager. Could you kind of like, give us the inside look at what the difference between these two things are?
Yeah, I think they're agents and managers that do similar things. It really depends on where you are in your career. In the beginning of the career, when you're developing somebody, it's very similar. We're trying to get the casting directors and the producers to know who our client is, the young person coming up. Part of my job is to shift depending on where the client is in their career. In the beginning, and I'm a little agency in that I generate a lot of appointments. I like that aspect of it. I like the negotiating aspect of it. But later on in the career, for somebody who's a little more developed and is on a different path, a lot of my job is, let's say we get 4 or 5 offers coming in, are reading the roles and knowing my client, knowing the taste, knowing which one they're going to respond to, pushing the 2 or 3 scripts forward that they should probably focus on, and giving them the reason why. But it's really all encompassing. The dad joke that I always say is a manager is the person that the client's going to call 2 a.m. and say, don't ask questions and bring a shovel. And my response is, not again, you dummy. It's just that kind of closeness that is important, to know your client, to know their taste, and to really be able to navigate this side of it with the client's best interests at heart. I think a cliche metaphor or analogy to that would be a sports one in football. I would be the quarterback and the client is the coach, where we discuss the game plan, and then I'm in the trenches, talking to the agents, making sure the agents are going the direction they need to, talking to the publicists, making sure the casting directors know who the person is going into a warm room. So it's hard to say. There's no definition of necessarily what a manager does, but it is really all encompassing, where I'm on the phone with them constantly, making sure that they're taken care of, and that everything is, that the only thing that they're worried about is acting, is their craft.
I think when I say we, I mean everyone is super excited to see like a new star in that realm, such as yourself, because it's kind of, you're at the place where you make things happen for careers, not just for projects. I think, and that's another way I think you can kind of distinguish an agent and a talent manager, is that like talent managers are managing a career. And it's not just about one project or the other, or a big or like a big blockbuster. So it's really heartwarming to see someone like Tigran kind of burst on the scene, as we were lucky to do about 6 months ago, when you first reached out to Creative Armenia. So very exciting things ahead from the Babajanyan corner, and keep your eye on everyone here. We're going to have one more. We have our final panelist to introduce, and then we'll open it up to general questions for everyone. The final panelist here is, of course, Sevo Hanyan. Sev Ohanyan is an Academy Award nominated producer and writer who co-wrote and produced the mystery thriller Searching and also Run, which was most recently premiered on Hulu. He's also produced Fruitvale Station, The Intervention, and the historical drama Judas and the Black Messiah, which was nominated for several awards. Sev was the recipient of the Sundance Institute Amazon Studios Narrative Producer Award. He's been named one of 11 innovators changing Hollywood by The Wrap, alongside Angelina Jolie and Jimmy Fallon. And he also serves as an adjunct professor at USC. Sev, welcome. Do you have a tale to tell us of when you kind of felt, and there's also so many points I'm sure where this story can take place, whether it's with Fruitvale, whether it's with Searching, when you kind of transitioned, or which was kind of your debut as a writer on the big stage, as well as being a producer. When did you feel like it kind of, you started to feel the ground beneath your feet?
Man, thanks for having me, by the way. It's such a great group of people. And I was taking notes with everything Tigran was saying, because now I know what a manager does. Got it, the shovel, copy that. Honestly, like, I think I do subscribe to what Catherine was saying, which is like, when do you make it? Like, maybe never, maybe you'll never feel it. But, you know, I honestly do feel like I made it even before my career started, you know, just like the privilege of being able to pursue this type of lifestyle. Like, I grew up in the greater LA area. You know, my parents immigrated us to this country when I was 4 months old. And the idea of even trying to be a filmmaker was so foreign and so alien, even though I was geographically close to Hollywood. I thought I would just be a journalist instead, because it felt safer and more stable, ironically. When I was in high school, when I was going to college for journalism, I started shooting these little YouTube videos poking fun of Armenian culture out of love. And I put those videos on YouTube literally just for fun. This is back in 2007, I think 40 years ago, if my math is correct. And those videos blew up. They became so popular. Armenians are sharing them all over the world. You guys may have seen it. It's like the Hamar, Cool Hamar, like those silly Barska High videos. And then I made another one. It got even bigger. I made another one. It got even bigger. And I made the decision to just make a film based on those videos. So I spent a summer writing and directing and shooting and editing. And I did every job. I say this all the time. I did every job except for makeup. And then when the makeup artist quit, I did that too. It's awful makeup. Spent $800 on my dad's home videos camera. And I found a great discount online for editing software. It was $0, believe it or not. And basically, you know, I made this film that was called My Big Fat Armenian Family, literally a story about Armenian immigrant parents and their Americanized kids and that culture clash, all of which takes place on a single road trip to Palm Springs. And when I screened that video at a movie in Glendale, sold tickets, sold DVDs, I don't know what I was expecting, but when thousands of Armenians showed up, total strangers who like laughed and clapped and cried at the right times, it really felt like I made it. And it's not a, you know, I don't think it's a coincidence that it was my own Armenian community that showed up to support, and they continued to buy the DVDs and they would, you know, look at it online, because that is what empowered me to even pursue this crazy industry that we're all, you know, so lucky to be a part of. And, you know, like beyond that, there's been, you know, great, you know, wins at Sundance and box office and Oscars, but all of that, to be frank, kind of still pales in comparison to that first moment of realizing that I can make something that I think of like actually resonate with audiences.
That's a great story. It's interesting to see the difference when people when people have felt like their confidence has appeared, and how it can be as simple as the first time you've actually seen an audience react to something you've done, and that you've made on almost no budget whatsoever. And that's kind of like the voice of the angels telling you to continue. Well, thank you all for being here. I'm going to start posing questions from our audience to kind of just to all of you generally. And let's start with the first one, which has been upvoted to the top, which is something you would expect to be asked on this panel by Ani Kazanjian. Hi, as an Armenian talent working in film and TV, I've come to find that I do not see a cohesive community of Armenians in the industry actively trying to support and represent Armenian talent. Why do you think that is? How are you helping Armenian talent find their voices? Who wants to take this on?
I could start. It's an interesting one because me going into when I first got into the business, I didn't know anybody. And one of the things that I really, it would have helped in the beginning because it was really difficult navigating which place to go, you know, whenever you have a few opportunities. I've done a few interviews. It would have helped for that guidance. Now, when I do see an Armenian last name, especially, I'm always the one I will reach out, or they will reach out to me, and we'll have a conversation. Sometimes it's a phone call, because I'm a firm believer in the rising tide raises all boats. You know, I think that it behooves me and all of us that all of us are successful, you know, and that we get to a certain place. So I think part of it is earning your seat at the table, you know, really working your butt off and being as talented as you can, no matter what it is that you do, being the best at it to get to the table. But the other part is, if you see somebody is working their ass off and is really doing that, to reach out or to help as much as you can. You know, it's okay to help, and it's okay to accept help. There's no shame in any of that, because we have one common goal, is to push ourselves and our people forward. And I feel like there's no better, I mean, we're a mountain people. There's no better analogy than our mountains. You know, you have Sis and Masis standing shoulder to shoulder, you know, next to each other, tall and proud. Like, bottom line, that's what we have to do. So whenever you do reach out to somebody, obviously make sure that you're doing it correctly. But whenever you do see somebody reaching out, put that hand out, you know, and help them out as much as you can.
And thank you for that answer, because I'll just add one layer.
If I may interject, I have an Armenian assistant.
That's amazing.
Yeah. That's great.
You know, she's the only Armenian assistant at UTA, and I grabbed her. You know, just because there's very few of us, and we just have to support each other. You know, it's 100%. That simple.
Yeah.
I'll add a little question because relevant to what Tigran said. How would you guys think of strategically, for an Armenian creator such as perhaps Ani or anyone else watching, if they're going to try to reach out to, say, one of you or whoever who is Armenian, and they want to make an impression without seeming like they're depending on a favor? Is there any strategic advice you can give them for how to, you know, craft their pitch or their presentation to an Armenian industry? Just something else to add to the general question for anyone who wants to answer it. If not,
go ahead, Seth.
No, Seth, yeah.
Yeah, I will say, and by the way, I'm still with Tigran. Like, when I was coming up, I wish there was any Armos I could go to. I wish I knew you guys existed. Michael, Darren, Catherine, I would have been blowing your phones up so hard. But I do the same thing. Anytime a young Armenian gets in touch, I will always give them that one call, give them the advice. And I always try to give, like, not fluffy advice, like actionable, real things that they can do. My advice is, do your homework before you reach out to anyone in the industry. Like, watch their movies, read their scripts, read every interview you can find on them, and also make sure you're coming to them already with having self-educated yourself. Like, don't be the guy saying, hey, what do I do? Be like, hey, here's who I am. Here's what I want to do. Here's what I've done already. And here's what I am planning on doing. What do you think? And you know, you will have earned our respect and because everyone's time is valuable. And with that in place, you will also probably impress us. And then Darren may ask you to be, you know, his next assistant or whatever it may be. So I would say the most important thing is come having done your homework and be ready to demonstrate that you're willing to do even more work. If you just
I was going to say, not Darren, but I have another example. Another young Armenian approached me and had a really solid reference, right? Knew some, you know, with respect to doing your homework. he knew somebody that I knew and knew and gambled that I respected that person, and approached and said, you know, not just only relying on himself being Armenian that I would give him attention, but, you know, came to the table with some ammo. And I, you know, as a result, I got him an internship at UTA this summer. So, you know, it's really all about, as Sev's saying, it's really all about the approach. You know, self-education, I think, is vital. You know, go into, you know, approach knowing as much about the person you're approaching.
Yeah.
And then, you know, that the rest of it will fall into place, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
But also don't approach it with a certain entitlement or that you are owed anything, but approach it open to learn, you know. And like Sev said, I love honesty. I love when people give me the truth, whether it's painful or not. And one of the things I always look at, because I don't want to waste anybody's time, if you made the effort to reach out to me, I'm going to give you truth, you know, saying maybe these are the steps or what have you. One of the things I'm also looking at is how you are interpreting that. You know, if you take offense to what I'm saying, or if I see that you're not really grabbing onto it, then I don't know if I will take a second call, you know, or I won't be as honest or as open as I will. You know, there are plenty of opportunities. There are plenty of people now out there. I mean, just take a look at this panel, but this entire week, Alec and Gurjian have put together such a fantastic group. There are people out there that are successful, but you have to go to it respectfully and also open to learn, and not necessarily the Armenian mentality of like, I know what I'm doing, you know, and give me a shot.
I think that's an important point. Because I think everyone's looking at how people react to the your first round of input if you're being approached by somebody in almost any field. I mean, Michael, I'm sure, went through this process in a very specific way recently when casting his film in with mostly Armenian talent, I'm assuming. And Michael, like, have you? I mean, are there any insights or critiques you picked up while shooting this film in Armenia over the last, you know, pandemic and war-ridden year that you feel like you could, you know, bestow some pointers to perhaps talent in Armenia and how they might better present themselves?
Sure. I mean, it's a slightly different situation because I was specifically looking for Armenians and trying to find talented Armenians to work with. And I think I'd say, to add to what everybody else has pointed out, like, I found a lot of people online. We found a choir just on YouTube. Actually, Serge helped me find this tar player that we needed, who was on YouTube. We found Hovik Kushkarian through Instagram. So I guess my point is putting yourself out there, and what you put out there, you know, what Sev did with his video, that kind of stuff, that people are going to see it. And that's the best way to approach, I think, is by doing stuff and putting it out there. And there are a lot of things now with the internet that can expose you to people like agents and someone like me who's specifically then looking for. I was trying to find actors and musicians and the people that had put themselves out there on these social networks and stuff. A lot of them, that's how I found them. So that, you know, it's just in addition to how if you're going to approach people in Hollywood, but also how much time you spend developing what you're doing and exposing it, doing anything you can to, you know, I did a similar thing to Sev. I made a film when the first film I was in, Newsies, we had a video camera. literally a video camera where you put the tape in, and we shot the whole thing in order, where we press pause in between takes, and we just made a crazy movie when we were, and that just doing stuff. I think it's important. I think that would be my advice, is to do as much as you can while you're also pursuing the business side of it, of meeting people and contacting people. Be creating as much as you can.
Catherine.
Whoa, Alec, you are super galactic right now.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting. I mean, I know, mindful of time, that each of us could probably spend 10 hours on this very question. So thank you for the great question. But the themes that we hear in here today, like, Michael, you talked earlier about like the films that inspired you that had a big impact with very little, be it Indiana Jones or other things, or independent films like Sex, Lies, and Videotape, a big impact with very little. We've talked about putting your stuff out on YouTube, doing your own thing. We've talked about packaging yourself, or the way so many of us on this call have sort of done every job, especially, Michael and Sev, like every job along the way. I think all of these things are among some of the best advice that we might give people who are looking to break in, because there isn't one path. And I think that this, the first thing I would say is, one of the things that was embedded in the question was this idea is like a cohesive approach, or a cohesive approach to, finding and sourcing Armenian talent. Don't expect a cohesive approach. This is the least cohesive thing in show business. I love this panel because it looks cohesive, right? But it's not. We are a distributed people, right? We're across every continent. It's so not cohesive. Now, I think it's cool to build cohesion, and I think we do that in different ways. And there are people who are making efforts to build, Armenian media professionals group. There's lots of different Armenian filmmaker groups. But the longer we expect cohesion, I think the longer we'll be disappointed. So we build it ourselves through the way we connect. So don't expect cohesion. And then also, the best way to tell your story is tell your story, right? Like, you do it. There is YouTube. There are ways to, and Michael and Sev have also, shared examples of literally putting their stories out there with very little. And that is a calling card, and it does open doors, like the stuff Darren's talking about. Like, a few little things can open a lot of doors. And then the last thing I'll say on that topic is, I said I'm a terrible networker, but I'm a good connector. And I do see them as different things. You may not know anybody, but what do you do with the conversation you do have, right? What do you do with the person you do get to know, be they Armenian or not? What do you do in that moment, right? And how do you show up? What are the questions you ask? Are you more curious, or are you more certain? Are you coming with that preparation, that Sev and Tigran have talked about, or, are you coming with just like some expectation of just like, somebody owes me, so I think it is really important to, use every part of yourself in that connecting moment, so that you're using it wisely, because it may be your only call. You may not get that second phone call, but you take that and you run with it somewhere.
Is it at all possible to penetrate a company like Pixar with an idea, or with a script, or with anything from the outside, or is Pixar kind of more of a big tent type of operation?
I will say we're more of a big tent type of operation. We don't take outside solicitation. There's outside ideas. We do take script samples when we're looking for writers, but we're not looking for the story, because we grow them in-house. So it's sort of like we're independent filmmakers in a big studio environment. Like we're making sort of our own stories. So no, not really there, but it is important that any submission for writer samples, that is, if you're a screenwriter and you want to be writing for Pixar, then you get Tigran or Darren, you get representation, because we can't take anything that didn't come through representation.
Yeah, and that's just a fact of, I expected that answer personally, and I know a lot of people have that question for just about any company, because there's this like endless rabbit hole for young creators. It's like, well, how do you read my script if you have representation? How do I get representation? And that's where that's where the advice trail ends, because there's no clear answer to any of this. It's why even choosing to continue to pursue a life in this world is kind of the filter. I mean, if you're still doing it after 10 years of endless frustration, rejection, that's kind of how you know you're meant for it. Because there's just no easy path. There maybe once was a slightly clearer path. It wasn't easy, but it was clear. Now it's sort of all over the place. That's just the way it is. This is a good actual segue. What you said at the end.
Can I just throw something on?
Please.
Because it's tough. It's chicken or the egg, right? Like, how do I get representation? How do I get it's tough to get. So then I can't. It's what Michael said. And you guys have so much more at your disposal now than ever with YouTube and you name it. Like, you could literally, with your cell phone, create something and send it to one of us, and it's a click away. And if it's brilliant, it's brilliant, and you're going to get a call back.
Yeah.
Like, you are, and like, it was much more difficult when we were coming up. What are we going to do? Send in a videotape of something? Like, the world, technology has made it so easy for people to showcase their talent that, ultimately the cream rises. Think of, exactly what Seth did, with his videos. Like,
and to quickly piggyback off of that and off of what Catherine was saying too, look, if you ask this question to 10 different people, you're going to get 11 different answers. And I think the important thing is to get as much perspective as you can to really create your own, because there's not one path. But it's also like, I get this question all the time about with actors, how do I get an agent or a manager? Well, you can blindly submit to 100 people and you may get 2 or 3 responses, but that's not where you should allocate your time and energy. It's to what Darren is saying, what everyone's saying is, you have to invest in yourself. You have to focus on yourself. You have to create as much as you can. You have to do theater. You have to make friends with casting directors, artistic directors, what have you. Create content and put it out there, because talent will never go unnoticed. And I don't care what anybody says, we all have the ego. We all want to discover the next Sev or Leonardo DiCaprio or whoever it is. We all want to find that person or that project or that piece of material. So instead of worrying so much about the chicken or the egg, focus on yourself, focus on the material that you're putting out there, because like Darren said, the cream will rise to the top. If you're undeniable, you will not go unnoticed.
I will tell you what is universal. I'm going to say this is universal, and I'm going to ask everybody on this panel to tell me if I'm wrong, because maybe for some of you it isn't. What I will say is cohesive is all of us look at the credits and look for Armenian names. Like, we see it. We see if our friends are on there, our family are on there. And Sev's example and his story of putting his first thing out there, was that at the Alex Theater? Where were you? You got, where you're showing.
It was at Glendale High School.
Glendale High School was the idea that the Armenians came out and supported. Like, I think that many of us, if not all of us, have felt, even when we felt alone, that there was that, the gentle hand of the Armenian community at our backs. If they saw us in the credit, they gave us a shout out and said, like, oh my God, I saw that. And so I think that is a shared experience, and that is a community that will come out for you even when it feels like no one else will. And that's not nothing. I think that's a big deal.
So I'll tell you guys how I got my agent, if that's helpful. When I was starting to screenwrite, my buddy and I, my writing partner and I, we were writing a movie. And I remember telling my dad, when my dad came home and he was like, what are you guys doing? We're writing a movie. We're going to sell this tab for like $400,000. He's like, really? He's like, I'll just buy it right now for $200. We're like, Dad, we're going to be millionaires. Why would we sell it to you for $200? We wrote the script and we started sending it to the agencies. And I was like, all right, here we go, guys. Here we go. Nothing. Crickets. Like, literally no one, like UTA, CAA, WME, nobody wanted this script. And then I remember I tried to go back to my dad. I was like, can we sell it for $200? He said, no, you lost your chance. So we made $0 on that script. But I realized, like, what everyone is saying is the way to get representation is to not try to get representation. Even if you succeeded in sending out query letters and somebody read it and actually wanted to represent you, that power dynamic is so not right for your agent and you and your manager and you. I eventually just ignored agencies' reputation. I just started making my own stuff. And this is like, my indie films. I started writing something. And then suddenly WME, CAA, UTA, and ICM all wanted to rep me. And I was like, I don't know. And they started courting me, meeting after meeting, started, buying me stupid things I had no business needing. And eventually I finally signed with CAA and have amazing agents, and it's a great relationship. But it was never about me trying to make connections. I don't think Hollywood's about who you know. I think it's about who knows you. So like networking to me is not trying to meet people in business cards. It's all about like everything everyone's saying, like work your butt off, make good stuff. Even if it's a YouTube video, even if it's something for your friends and you, over time, someone's going to want to hit up Darren and look good to Darren and say, hey, there's this really great writer. No one has repped him or her yet, but I'm going to connect you guys, because then you're going to have a great client, and then you're also going to appreciate that I did that for you. It's so much better than begging people to, whatever. And if anyone wants to buy that script, it's available. I'll sell it to you guys. Any $100, $200, I'll take it.
Can you hear me? Oh, there we go. Okay. I just want to add one thing that's related to the Armenian side of this conversation. And I think for me, I would promote the idea that especially people in Armenia or people that are creating stuff, part of the reason we made the film, I made this film in Armenia, was I wanted to do something that kind of celebrated Armenian culture instead of another genocide film, another wallowing in stuff. Those films are very important, and it's a very important subject. But I think Armenia, being Armenian, is we have a huge culture, and we have so much that could be shared. And I would just encourage young artists who are Armenian to look at that and be inspired by that. And if you're going to create, and it's going to be related to your heritage, dig deep and find things that you can share that are going to help build us. Because there's so much there, and that's I think. There's when making the film in Armenia, I was very inspired by how much of the younger generation there's stuff being created that I think talent agents would see this stuff and go, oh my God, this is fantastic, and it's rooted in Armenian culture, but it's not necessarily it doesn't have to be the same story. It doesn't have to be the same narrative. There's lots to explore, and I would just put that out there to encourage young artists to it's like we have a big well and nobody's tapped it. So please do that.
Yeah, to use it as a spice and not the dish, right?
Yes.
Like, fantastic that we're Armenian, and I'm so prideful of that. It's something that, our parents gave us, and their parents, it's a beautiful thing that we are Armenian. But with these projects, we have such great stories and perspectives and voices, so tell your stories. Obviously have an element of have that spice of Armenian in it, so it's distinct, so it's different, so it's beautiful, but also tell your story. Say what you want to say, and don't focus on things that you feel you're obligated to talk about because you come from a certain part of the world.
So basically what you're saying is the Armenian part is the sumac and the story is the Monty. Okay, a specific question while we have a chance, very specifically Nadek Safarian asks if screenplay competitions are still a useful way for new screenwriters to get into the industry. Could you guys comment on screenplay competitions as they stand in the year of our Lord 2021, or any other kind of advice you might have for screenwriters specifically?
I mean, I'm a writer, hell yes. That is an incredible way to break through. You could be somebody who's in Yerevan and you write the greatest script of all time. It will place well at a competition. And if you're submitting to a lot of competitions and you're not placing well, I would say look at your writing. Go buy some more screenwriting books. Go read more screenplays that are working. Really be more critical. I really firmly believe in this, what they used to say, which is like you can throw a script out of your car on the 405 freeway, which is a freeway here in LA, and if it's good, you'll get a call. So I'm a big believer, and screenplay competitions honestly really helped me. I placed really well in a bunch of them, and that led to a lot of calls from agents.
And part of that too is, Sev, I love what you said, because look at the action that happens. If you are going to a bunch of places or competitions or what have you, and you're not getting the responses, it might not be the competitions that are wrong. You know, it might be that your script needs a little work, you know, so there's a lot of self-awareness and reflecting that is also important in the process.
Personally, I would say I don't know whether to, you know, advise one way or the other on competitions, but because there's so many that it's hard to tell which ones are real and not. There are some definitely helpful and real ones, and you can see who's like made their breakthrough through them. And I'm sure Sev knows several of these success stories. So I think the more the merrier in terms of increasing your opportunities. I would personally advise reading a lot of scripts that are successful, especially if you can get your hands on first drafts of them, because that's what you're submitting. I mean, first kind of like the pre-production version of the script, the one that's sold. Look them up online and just read a lot of them. It sounds boring and it sounds maybe even redundant, especially if you've seen the movies, but I've noticed that it really helps you internalize how a script feels to a reader, how it kind of evokes the movie that it became when it's really good. So that's something that I would just, it's very ABC advice that I would add to this. There is an interesting question from, let's see, I'm going through these. There's a question from Tom Nersessian, who is a rising creative executive in the industry. He had a two-part question. Part A is, Tigran, what is your value system when considering taking on a new client? And I'll ask part B after you answer that.
I mean, for me, it's taking on a client is hard. It's a process. Some of my colleagues make fun of me a little bit because I take it maybe too seriously, but it is, my list is short by design. And because I know how much work goes into it, because I know how much of a commitment it is. And so if I'm putting in 60, 70-hour weeks, one, I need to know that the person that I'm representing is a good person, doesn't fall in the life is too short category. There have been plenty of people that I've passed up on where they've gone to do great things and it's, bless, go, have success. That's fine. But I never want to feel miserable. I love my job. I love what I do. And going into it is so important to me. I don't view it as a job. So whenever I'm on emails at 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, it's just something that, I mean, at 9 o'clock, I'm not enjoying it that much, but like at 6 o'clock, I'm enjoying it quite a bit, but it's also, I love people that are up for the fight. I love that, whenever I have a client, she's a Steppenwolf trained, very smart actress. Like I send her an audition. Sometimes she sends it in like 5 or 6 hours and a fantastic audition, but she's always gung ho, ready to go, prepared, simple things that you would think most people would have. But I feel most people don't have those kinds of that kind of work ethic. So just be a good person and work your butt off, simple.
And part B of the question was directed at Darren. Darren, do you have any kind of, are you at the point where you look for any specific qualities in a client other than kind of like their generic body of track record of success and stardom and charm?
Honestly, sort of a baseline rule for me is I ask myself, would I be friends with this person? And if the answer to that is no, I don't really care who they are. Then, it's because it's a marriage. It is a full-on relationship at the deepest level. So, if if it's oil and water with you and that person, again, no matter how their movies, whoever, it's not going to be enjoyable for me, and the relationship ultimately will be doomed. So that's really, again, that's my baseline.
And by the way, I want to just direct, Sev Ohanyan has kindly listed some good screenplay competitions in the chat. I'll just rattle them off right now, but look up on your own. One of them is called Script Pipeline, Austin Film Festival, which is well known, Nichols, which is well known. Those are, big timers. Blue Cat. So put those in your list if you're a screenwriter, and check out the chat if you didn't hear what I just said.
I have a question regarding that. Does the blacklist still exist? That where you can send your script in and get it read, and at one point that helped me out because getting an opinion on your script is sometimes hard, and I guess that service. It's a competition kind of thing, but also you can pay a little bit of money and somebody will actually read your script and give you notes. And they're very much, I felt like I got good feedback in terms of how the industry saw what I was writing from that.
And that's kind of the equivalent to, what I was saying is a reference, right? If someone was calling me and said, I know this person, feel free to call this person, reaching out to you. And of course he or she has an Armenian last name, and obviously I do as well. Being blessed by something like the blacklist, is immediately going to get someone's attention, for sure. But just to be frank, sending in a blind query letter with the script, it's just, I frankly don't have the bandwidth, to, entertain all of those unless something has, prior sort of blessing, so to speak. And it's been elevated in some way, like a blacklist or, any sort of, screenwriting competition. I mean, I'm not a lit agent. I'm a talent agent. So, but yet I still get, script queries all the time because I think people just go online and just blast them out. But it really is, you're just not going to get anywhere doing that. I can't stress that enough.
Yeah. So as we wrap it up, and, I think one way to maybe summarize that what you said, Darren, in terms of the strategic way might be to say that you really need to focus on like who you can find that will actually read your script first, whether that's a competition where maybe if you pay it $10 or whatever, maybe it's more these days, you might get actual coverage of the script.
I mean, the major agencies, and I don't mean to be a downer, but I also want to be helpful and realistic, Right. It's like Sev said you sent your script to all the major agencies right out of the gate and you probably didn't get one response, right? Yeah, so guys, don't waste your time doing that, honestly. Screenwriting competitions, blacklist, those, mechanisms are set up to find that diamond in the rough. It's once you pass through that stage, then you're going to get more attention in an agency. And from an acting standpoint, again, you have the tools at your disposal to create. Like, that's how you're going to get discovered. TikTok, YouTube, you name it. There are a million ways to showcase yourself. But, a resume and a headshot, that pops into my inbox. And yes, if you have an Armenian last name, like, that's great. But like, there's not much I can do with that.
And maybe if you're a writer at the same level as a completely up and coming actor, you might, and some up and coming actors or actresses, you might want, who want to create something to showcase for themselves. You can work with them and make that happen. I mean, it's just a matter of who has an ear for you and will actually has like something they can do with your material. I think that has to be focused on if you're really starting out. It's not easy. It is not easy. That's just, you're just going to have to accept that it's not easy.
Can I add to that, Alex, really quick? Is UCLA Film School, USC Film School. I remember when I was starting out, the idea of just go. There are filmmakers that need actors, and if you're an actor and nobody's going to look at you unless you have tape, unless you have you've been in something. That's a great way to do it. Go to find people that are making films and go and volunteer, be in a bunch of student films. it's a way to get started to just do stuff.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, everybody wants free or cheap help or free or cheap acting that's quality. And I think a lot has been said today about, how to reach out, how to get your script read, and I think that how is just a really important word in all this, because as you heard in a theme here again is like, this person I'm going to be dealing with a lot. It's like a marriage, like film, like it or not, for everyone who wants to break into it, film is and storytelling is hugely collaborative. The day you're going to go, you may sit in your cafe or coffee bean and tea leaf and write your script alone. But if you ever want it made, it's hugely collaborative, and trying to reach out, whether it's the way you write your email, the way you approach your phone call, just your how you interact with people. Like, Darren wants to be friends with you, and he doesn't want to waste his time with somebody who's not. Just got to be a cool person. You got to be a cool person. If you've got temper issues, or if you get short with people, or if you don't write a good email, work on your personality and show somebody your draft email before you send it. Because I think the way you approach that communication can make or break whether somebody calls you back. Relationships are really important in this. And again, you don't have to have a lot of them, but you've got to make them count in your approach, the way you package yourself, the way you speak, the way you write. So, and it's okay to get help. Like who said, it's okay to take help. Let somebody read your email if you don't think you've got the tone right, because that stuff does matter. It's a first impression, especially for a writer.
And
can I just add something?
Yeah, please.
Oh, sorry. Just one more quick thing. Just because there may be a lot of actors there that still just don't really even know where to begin. And, Michael, you can probably, add to this. But, as a guy that graduated from USC and wanted to be an actor myself, I joined an acting class. And I think that is really important. And if you join an acting class, what you're really joining is a community of people that all have the same goal that you do. And in that acting class, maybe you'll do a showcase. And those showcases are set up so smaller boutique agents will go that are looking for new actors and potentially sign you. And it's when you get signed by a boutique agent that maybe then gets you your first break, which leads to the next big break, or, smaller break, next smaller break. And then maybe you then happen to get a series regular role on a show, and then you start getting the attention of agencies like UTA, CAA, WME, because we really can't engage unless you have a platform. So I can't stress this enough. Get into an acting class, because that will lead to your first agent, that will lead to your first manager, and that will just by way of networking lead to opportunity.
And theater, I know in LA it's a lot more difficult, but for our company at least, theater is so incredibly important. And I found my niche really has been transitioning actors from the stage to film and television, and also from the school showcases. And part of that is because a theater actor has a certain skill set that's transferable across all platforms, across all kinds of acting. So in LA, it's a little more difficult. But I think that if you really want to grow and push your craft forward, find stage work. I know some people are terrified of it, but that's okay. You might be bad the first time, the second time, the third time. After the fifth, when you're really crushing it, you invite me, you invite Darren or whoever it is, to come see you, and that magic of the stage will do the talking for you.
I think I would, add a cherry to this, which is just don't say no to anything when you're young. For a good long while until you'll know when you can afford to say no. But in the beginning, I think a mistake a lot of people make, including myself, is like you look at some part of the work and you're like, that's not for me. Like, YouTube, not for me. Theater, stage, not for me. That's not what I'm doing. I think that kind of mentality has to be scrubbed out, and you just have to do everything that can possibly get you off your butt and onto and in the mode of creative work of any kind, because there's also the chance that before you even break into Hollywood, Hollywood breaks apart itself. I mean, we don't know what's coming out of this pandemic, and you don't know where the next opportunities might even be more lucrative than the current ones that seem to be shining here on the hills of the Santa Monica Mountains. So on that note, I'm going to wrap it up. And if anyone has a final nugget of sterling advice, please do speak up now and add it. And then we'll conclude this. And thank you all for being here and being so helpful. Any final sterling nuggets of advice that are bound to be of endless value to those who hear them?
That's a high bar, but I wanted to offer gratitude, Alec, for pulling us together, and Gurjian, and gratitude to this group for spending time today. This is a very, very cool conversation.
Oh, well, we're really happy to have you, Catherine, because this is, I think, your first Creative Armenia event, and we've had some that have, for very unfortunate reasons, had to be postponed. And I'm really grateful to all of you for taking your time, because I think you're all five of you so successful in various different ways, and you've all had kind of interesting journeys that from really the ground up. I mean, the common theme here. Maybe Michael's the one person in this group who had family connections into industry just because he grew up in Oakland. Maybe not, but I think we're all kind of like.
My dad's a scientist. My mom's a nurse.
We're all it's very funny because Armenians are the only people you meet who grew up in LA. When you come to LA, the Armenians in LA are the only ones who are like natives to LA, but none of them have any family connections ever in the industry ever. So we might as well be in Gyumri when it comes to that. So it's all been a struggle, and it all takes mountain energy to get anywhere in this world. Thank you all of you for joining this panel. Thank you to all the panelists and the moderators of Creative Armenia Week this whole week. These will all be posted online soon. We look forward to doing some real life Creative Armenia events before too long, or more of these. We'll figure it out. Always check out creativearmenia.org. I personally, here from Little Armenia to Greater Armenia, wish you all the best spirits as you pursue your creative projects. May you leave your footprints on Yerishe's road to unreachable glory. And see you all soon. Thank you.